Hi guys, welcome back to another process video. This is a 12 by 12 layout that I'm doing of my daughter's first lost tooth, and I'm going to be using 3 pictures kind of in a grid pattern. I kind of go back to this style every once in a while because it's just a very simple style, and what I like to do is make a grid with the 3 or 4 multiple pictures, and then I do the embellishing and clustering around it. So this time I want to do some mixed media, so I pulled out my gelatos and I am just putting kind of a halo, if you want to call it that, of color around each one of these squares. And as you'll see here as I'm going along, that pink or that peachy pink on the left hand side, I actually end up pulling out a darker color because it was just a little bit too light on the background and it just didn't stand out quite enough. So a little bit later you're going to see that it's going to be a little bit darker. So I'm just smearing these on directly on the page. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to smear them with my finger. It just isn't working quite well enough. So I'll end up ultimately using a baby wipe, and that is perfect because I don't have any gesso or anything on the background of this paper, and I don't want to use a lot of water, otherwise the paper is going to warp really bad. So the baby wipe is the perfect solution because it just has enough of wetness or moisture on the wipe to get this blended, but not adding a lot of water to the page. So you'll see me pulling out that baby wipe here in just a second. And it does smear decent with your finger, it just doesn't smear quite as nice. So that is why I ultimately choose the baby wipe. So here you go. You're going to see how this is going to blend so much better. There's my example of my finger. And then you're going to see how it looks with the baby wipe. So you can really see how that really changes. And I just have to work at this for a little bit to get it to blend the amount that I want it to. And at the very end of the video, I'm actually going to end up adding a little bit more because a lot of my layout gets covered. And I think I add just a little bit of water to the baby wipe to make it blend just a little bit more, but just not a lot to damp the page too much. So there is the end result with the darker pink color in the top left, and now I'm going to start working on the clusters here. I am going to I'm going to use some of these Project Life cards that came in this collection for the layering. So you're going to see me choosing and going through those to try to figure out which one's going to work best. And I really like these Project Life cards. It's actually different colors than I'm used to. I got the paper pack and these cards and some embellishments from a scrapbook crop that I went to. So it was a free gift with the crop, which was awesome. That's always nice when you get some free little goodies when you go to a crop. So I'm using those. I wanted to get those out and use them on my stash, or for my stash, because they've been sitting for quite some time and I wanted to get them out. So I am just going through that. And I'm going to next go through the die cut pack, and I do cut quite a bit of this out. I did a lot of shuffling through die cuts and things like that, trying to figure out which ones were going to work best on the page. So I spared you me shuffling through all of those, and it will kind of skip past some of those spots. But the nice thing about this kit also, it came with some of these acetate pieces, which was neat because it just adds another layer of different kinds of dimension to the page. So it's not just all cardstock pieces, you also have the like kind of clearer or the shinier aspects too. So this is just me trying to figure out what tabs and things I'm going to use. I really like the variety that came in this kit. There's tabs, and then there's little flags, and like this heart strip that I'm putting there as a background, hearts, flowers, all kinds of stuff. So that was really fun to play with and look through all of those little bits and pieces to try to figure out what I'm going to do. So now I am thinking that the squares look a little bit floaty, so I want to anchor them a bit more by adding some cardstock around each one of the squares. So I don't actually mount the entire square, but I am going to be using pieces of the paper from the collection just kind of on the left and the right and on the bottom of the squares to kind of anchor those embellishment pieces. So that's kind of what I am doing now with this green kind of squiggly paper. It's not quite straight lines, and I think this really helps the grids pop off of the gelato background that I put too. So it's kind of a twofer. Not only does it anchor the embellishments, but it also makes the squares pop a little bit more. And I really like this paper. It's probably one of my favorites. It's got these little squiggles with hearts every once in a while. So I really think this is a cute, cute paper. So I'm going to trim that down and then put that at the base of the top left square. And in the end, I'm going to actually round all of my corners I have, and those Project Life pieces that I put down first. The corners are rounded, and I typically don't really care if I have round and squared off edges. It doesn't really bother me. But for some reason on this layout, it just seemed like it worked better when I had all round edges. So I will go back in after I, of course, glue everything down and put in or use my corner rounder to trim the corners of a lot of these squared off pieces, and I just think it makes a little bit more of a cohesive look on this page. So I'll be doing that a little bit later, but first I'm just still trying to futz with the different pattern papers and trying to figure out what's going to work best with backing on each of these. So on this one, I really like the phrase that said "say what," and I thought the little corner would be cute if it was overlapping the picture. So I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife and trim this out a little bit so that it comes up over the photograph. And I'm just using a regular craft knife for this. So that's going to go on that top right photo. And I just really like how this looks, where it has just a little bit of the edge popping over. Just again, it just gives it a little more dimension. A lot of these acetate pieces have this clear plastic protective layer on it, so I am just removing that. These are little tags, or that is a little tag. It has a hole in it, but the hole is going to be covered up, so I'm not going to end up needing to put any thread. I don't like to leave naked tags. I like to have them have the thread, but in this case, the hole's covered, so you don't even really realize it's a tag. So now I am going to start gluing everything down, just basically not really adding a whole lot more at this point, but just getting all my elements down. So I'm going to kind of fast forward you through this so you don't have to watch me stick down things that you've already seen me placed on the layout. And again, it's a combination of clear acetate pieces and cardstock pieces and the flags and the ephemera and the die cuts that came in the collection. So now I am finally, for the most part, happy with my layout. I do want to add a little bit of journaling, so I took this card that has a grid on it and I'm just attaching it to the top left. And again, I'm adding some more of these little bits and pieces to anchor, and I thought that the top left needed a little bit of green on the right to mimic the green on the bottom square. And just kind of trying to bring the colors from the different grid pieces over to the other grid pieces so that it has a more cohesive look, like I was saying. So I think this is about where I'm going to start adding a little bit more a little bit more pattern paper and then start rounding my corners. Yeah. And I just really think if you can kind of see the difference between the squared off and the round, I just think it ends up looking better this way. And this is just an old Creative Memories corner rounder punch that I've had in my stash for quite some time. And it still works very nicely. I really like the Creative Memories products. They last a good long time. So I decided I needed some more of this pink paper to bring it from the left hand side to the right, and I'm just going to corner around all 4 of the corners and just kind of put that as a strip behind that. And I like how that looks, so I'm just kind of futzing with the placement, and then once I am happy with that, I'm just going to add some adhesive and glue that to the back. And I'm going to corner around this because you can see that little corner, trying just to get all of those straight edges that I had missed earlier. And now I am going to continue adding some of these cardstock pieces or pattern paper pieces to the background until I get it to look the way I think it needs to look. And this is a nice way to use up your scraps. So if you have like lots of little pieces that you really don't want to put back in your stash because you don't think you're probably going to use them, this is a good way to get those used up, is just adding these little bits and pieces as layering elements behind your photos and things like that. So I really like this paper. It's probably one of my favorites in the collection. It has like a charcoal gray background with these, what is it, like aqua color plus signs. I just really like the color combination of that, so that's probably one of my favorite papers in this collection. And I thought it needed a little bit more of a dark base at the bottom on the right, so I am adding that there. Again, just bringing that color around the page. And I didn't have a whole lot of light pink over here except for that little label on the right, so I'm going to add this little swirly heart paper. Again, another one of my favorites. It's just really cute. I like the motif of that. And I think I'm really getting to about the end of where I'm going to be adding a lot of the pattern paper, and I'm just going to now look through a couple more of these die cuts and see if I can get a little bit more on the page. Oh, and I'm adding a little scrap here of that piece that I cut off from the bottom right page. And I just felt like it could use a little bit more, so I'm going to use this, I think I'm going to use this hello, and then I'm going to use a vellum piece over that too. And it says good, or so good. I can't remember exactly what the first word is. Life is good, maybe? I know it says good. But so I'm going to use that as a layering piece over the photo there. And I feel like I could use something in the top left, on that top left photo where the kind of my daughter is showing her little tooth. There's kind of an empty top left space. I don't think I end up going and putting anything there, but I can't quite remember now. But looking at it on the video, it does seem like that is a little naked up there, but I may not add anything additional at this point to that picture. So I'm going to trim this tab here and add it to the top right. And I'm going to add a little journaling on here. I think I put the date, or I might just say first tooth. I can't quite remember. But I do add a little bit of some writing on that tab. And then I found this 1, and I always struggle with using like the little random numbers and letters in these embellishment packs. So I thought it was perfect because it was our first tooth, so I used the number 1 in that cluster. And now I am going to start gluing everything down, just using my tape runner. And I'm going to write, let's see, what do I write? I just use my Sharpie pen to write something. I think it's the date. Let's see. Yeah, the date, September 2014. I'm going to stick that up there. And this is about where I'm going to figure out that I need a little bit more gelato around the page, because when you put the picture down, you really just don't see very much. So I'm going to add a little bit more and just smear that again with the baby wipe and then dry that with my heat tool. That's the only thing bad when you do this mixed media. You try so hard to make sure that you have enough around whatever you're doing, but then you start embellishing and things like that, and then you can't really see what you did. So you have to add more, but that's okay. It's easy to do. I haven't glued anything down. So I like that a lot better, and I'm finished getting the extra on that top left. And I think I'm going to realize here I need a little bit more of the gray as well. So you're going to see me adding more of that. It's kind of like a bronzy gray. It's a really pretty kind of bronzy brownish gray color, and it really worked well with this collection. So I'm going to add just a little bit more, dry that up a little bit with my heat tool, and then add the photo down. And then really the last thing that I have to do on this layout is add the title. So the title is going to be First Lost Tooth, and I'm going to be using 2 different thickers, one in a dark gray font and then one in like a crystally glitter pink font. So First and Tooth will be in this gray font that you're seeing here, and then the Lost will be in a pink. So here is some close-ups. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Like hearing from you, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Thanks. Bye guys. Bye.